Donald from Annapolis, Maryland hit me and said, hey, which coaches do you believe are at a crossroads this season? Now, Donald, I think maybe you meant which guys are on the hot seat. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I didn't take it that way. I think you could be at a crossroads and be totally safe. Now, some of these guys may be on a hot seat, but some of them could be safe and just they're at an inflection point in their career. So I think Billy Napier, it's fair to describe him as being at a crossroads. My opinion on Billy Napier, who we'll have on the show Tuesday, is Billy Napier is a phenomenal football coach who was really good at Louisiana and who got hired at Florida. And I think of him the same way I would a really, really potentially high-performing automobile that pulled out of the driveway and got its wheel stuck in like a muddy ditch. Nothing wrong with the car, but the wheel's spinning. And, you know, if you're late for work or whatever, it's not a big deal. But if you don't put together a good season your first 3 years in the SEC, you could be out of a job. And it's not like Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, where they gave him a ton of runway and he's got like 6 years before he wins more than 6 games. That doesn't happen. And so you could be a really good coach, and if you don't pretty immediately figure things out, you could be out of a job. And that's why this year is a crossroads year for Billy Napier, because I am not like a lot of other people. I'm not of the opinion that he's in over his head or anything like that. I'm not of that opinion. I am of the opinion that there are some things about being the head coach at Florida that are a little bit different than being the head coach at Louisiana, and sometimes that stuff's hard to digest at the outset. Not everyone just seamlessly transitions. Doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean they're incapable. It just means it didn't immediately click. So, yeah, absolutely a crossroads year there. I think you could say the same thing about Dabo Swinney, and I don't think there's an ounce of hot seat talk around Dabo Swinney, but the perception of Clemson right now is that they've taken a step or two back, which is reality. That's perception, that's reality. I don't think they would argue that. Do they ascend back? Or do they continue to, you know, sort of slowly drift back? Because they were a top 2 program in the country. And then, you know, you drop off a little bit. You're still a top 5 program. Then, well, we're still a top 10 program. And I've got them as the 10th best program in the country right now, by the way. We did that the other night on the show. Then you drop off a little bit more. Do you? That's my question. Do you continue to drop off? The other day, actually last show we did, I was talking about Clemson on the show. And I said, Clemson should be a college football playoff team this year. Those were the words I said. And there was a Clemson independent YouTube channel out there that does really good coverage from what I saw. He took it and said, oh, Josh Pate's wrong about that. He's wrong. Clemson's not going to make the playoff this year. Well, it wasn't a prediction I was making, nor am I making it now. I don't predict the playoff in spring. I barely do it in August. What I said is, when you have those level resources, that level talent roster, and they expand the playoff to 12, unequivocally, you should be a college football playoff team. And if you're not, there should be consequences. So Clemson's got a wide open shot this year. If you look at the FanDuel odds on the ACC, they're right up there. I think they're like a co-favorite to win the ACC. You do that, you'll 100% be in the playoff. If not last year, I guarantee you this year you will be. But what if, just for argument's sake, Clemson's like 9-3 this year? You're not firing Dabo Swinney, but it is indicative of a further subtle slide towards above average and a slide further away from being elite. I think Lincoln Riley is a coach at a crossroads this year. Now, ultimately, he has been at one, and I think he knew that, and that's why he made fundamental philosophical shifts to his program, and I credit him for doing it, because a lot of guys get to that level, and that's his second major head coaching job, and they look around and just kind of think to themselves, well, I am who I am. Whatever my identity is, whatever my program's identity is, we can tweak it here or there. Well, he's not tweaking it, man. He tore half the house down, and they're rebuilding it. Good for him. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'll tell you what he was doing was not going to work. At the highest levels, it was not going to work, and you got to credit a guy for realizing that. So they go and they overhaul the defensive staff, which is one of the most upgraded defensive staffs in the country. Contrary to what some people thought I said the other night, I just didn't say it was one of the 4 most upgraded. And that's its own side argument that I can have with Southern Cal fans amongst ourselves. But it's a really upgraded defensive staff. Do you have the players overnight to implement and install whatever you want to install? Probably not. But I will tell you this, you need to pay attention to USC recruiting, because USC has been kind of making noise all over the country, recruiting areas of the country they're going to have to continue to recruit. So Lincoln Riley, for several reasons, I think, could be viewed as being at a crossroads right now. Not a job security crossroads. Dave Aranda, on the other hand, Baylor, is at a job security crossroads. I've got immense respect for Dave Aranda. I've spoken about it many times on the show, but they have not been good enough. They were in a situation last year where it looked like he may lose his job, and they kept him, and he went and made some staff moves, and then some of the staffers got taken, and so I don't know how good they're going to be this year. I will say this, anything's possible in the Big 12. Anything's possible. I would direct your attention to just last year. Neil Brown was at his own crossroads at West Virginia. And Neil Brown was the #1 name on a lot of hot seat lists. And then, what'd they do? They won way more games than you thought they would. Because anything's possible in the Big 12, a.k.a. America's College Football Conference. Dave Aranda, I'm actually interested in going to Waco and doing a show from Baylor and having a sit down with Aranda. I have not talked to them about that. Maybe they're watching. But I don't know if enough people have really sat there and listened to him. Dave Aranda's brutally honest. He's very calculated. He's very intentional with everything he says. But he is a guy who, if they're terrible at something, he'll tell you they are, but he'll also walk you through why and what they're trying to do to change it. He's got a mind that goes so far beyond football and actually brings a lot outside of football back into football. And it's just one of the most fascinating guys that you could ever sit there and listen to. And it may be something we explore. But yeah, this year, really big year for Dave Aranda. And I'll tell you another one, just up the road in old Southwest Conference country, Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Made one of the splashiest but also substantive moves in the offseason when he brought in Bobby Petrino to be his offensive coordinator. And there are most people actually will leave Arkansas for dead this year. So what do? That's the definition of a crossroads. Pittman doesn't need to coach, first off. Pittman's 10 times financially set, and he'll be good, but he has also, I think, still got a fire to coach there. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to have sit here 2 years ago and said, oh man, Pittman, he blends perfectly with Arkansas. What you love is you love that culture fit figurehead, and then let everything beneath him just sort itself out. I'm not going back on that. It's just that when that's the dynamic, it's not going to work every year. Understand what realistic expectations should be at Arkansas, and then it's fine to have high standards. They should. They just went and got Calipari at Kentucky, or from Kentucky in basketball, and you've got names like Tyson and J.B. Hunt up there and whatnot, and folks in college circles know what that means. Hey, they're not just active in basketball. You know what? For that matter, this is just my mind working in real time. Maybe I should have mentioned Arkansas earlier in the transfer portal segment, because a program that can go do what they just did in basketball with the names that they have on the donor list in basketball could also do that in football, could they not? Whomst amongst us knows. Maybe Arkansas is one of the big surprise splash winners in the portal.